we are looking at encoding schemes, this happens at the physical layer. And when we are dealing with encoding, basically what we are talking about is the translation or mapping of data into signals and doing the same when they reach the destination, or doing the reverse when we get to the destination. So when we talk about encoding and decoding, that is exactly what we mean, that data which is in digital format, when it is leaving your computer or when it is leaving the source node where it has been generated, it has to be translated into signals or mapped into a signal format so that it can be transmitted across the network until it reaches the destination. So that is what we mean by encoding. When it reaches the destination node, then it has to be brought back to the data format, which can be understood by the computer, and the operating system will translate it to a language that the user can understand. And that is what we call the decoding. So that is what we mean by encoding and decoding. All these activities take place at the physical layer. And here we are focusing on Ethernet, which now defines several physical layer implementations, where we are looking at 10 base 5, 10 base 2, 10 base T, and 10 base F. All these are different standards which are implemented or which are configured at the physical layer to enable the transmission of this data, which has been translated into signals. In our last class, we looked at all these bases and we were able to understand what they mean. So when we are looking at the sender side, data will have to be translated. The digital data can be translated either into a digital signal or into a analog signal, depending on the medium of transmission. If it is going to be wireless transmission, then it has to be translated into an analog signal. If it is a cable, then it is a digital signal, or what we call the electric current. And these coding schemes, they can be divided into several types depending on their characteristics. And one of the characteristics about these coding schemes is that they should be self-synchronizing. What do we mean by self-synchronizing? By synchronizing, we look at the aspect of timing. When we are looking at synchronizing, we are looking at the aspect of timing. We are also looking at the aspect of, we are also looking at the aspect of ensuring that there is flow control. So when we are looking at synchronization, these are the two aspects we are trying to look at, such that both the sender and the receiver clocks should be synchronized. Because like we were saying in our last class, if a sending device is transmitting at a higher speed than the receiving device, then there should be some kind of clocking or synchronization of the clocks. That is what we mean by timing. Then flow control, ensuring that what is being transmitted is able to reach the destination as required. Then there should also be some error detection capability. All these coding schemes need to have some error detecting capability. Like we were saying, there are so many interferences which might come, which the transmission might be affected by, and that is why we need some error checking capability so that there can be correction or retransmission. We're also saying that there should be immunity to noise and interference. Also, they should be less complex, or the complexity should be to the minimum level as possible. And then there should be no low frequency component, or what we call the DC component, because that will affect long distance transmission, whereby the DC component increases. It means that interference is going to happen or loss of signal is going to happen. So that is what we mean by the characteristics which can now be used to determine which line coding scheme is best for transmission at any given time. And these are the types we normally have. We have the unipolar, whereby we have non-return to zero. We also have polar, whereby we have the return to zero, non-return to zero level, non-return to zero inverse. We also have the biphase, whereby this is return to zero, this is biphase, and biphase we also have Manchester and differential Manchester. So we are going to look at this. We're also going to look at bipolar coding schemes. We'll also look at the multi-level and multi-transition coding schemes. So when we are looking at the unipolar scheme, what it means, if this is our waveform or this is our wave diagram, then we always have this as the positive side, this upper side, and the lower side, which is the negative side. So non-return to zero will always operate on one side of the waveform. That is what it means basically. So when it is operating on the side, on one side of the waveform, then what it does is that when data, if this is the data we are trying to transmit, then it will use a positive voltage to define a 1 and the 0 voltage, which is here on the line, to define a 0. So if this is the data which is being transmitted, a 1 will have a positive voltage, a 0 will have a 0 voltage, a 1 will have a positive voltage, and so on and so on. So it is as simple as that, meaning that a positive charge is a 1, a 0 charge is, or a 0 voltage is a 0. And it is as simple as that. And that is how it works. But now this scheme is going to use more power as compared to the polar schemes to send one bit, and there is going to be some kind of resistance. That is why it requires more power. So we will see how that affects it, but that is one of its disadvantages. Now, for continuous set of zeros and ones, then self-synchronization and baseline wandering is going to be a challenge. Because, for example, if we say there's going to be a series of ones, then it causes this voltage to be constant here. And that is what causes what we call baseline wandering. So those are the challenges with the non-return to zero encoding scheme. It was used initially when communication was simple and transmissions were simple. Not so many machines, not so much distance, and it used to work. But then with continuous computation and research, we came to the polar schemes, whereby non-return to zero has been improved, and we have one which is level and the other one is inverted. So how do these two work? Let us just look at an example here. The amplitude, when we are talking about level, is that the level here is going to be changing. A 0 is here, a 1 goes to the other level. A 0 plays on one level and a 1 plays on another level down here. So that is how the representation of non-return to zero level works. Then we also have the non-return to zero inverted, which follows here. And we are showing that a 0 would start here, then there is a shift when a 1 occurs, and it comes down here. But then instead of shifting again when a 0 occurs, then there is an inversion which takes place, and the zeros follow through at this lower level. So that is why it is called inverted. So here, the logic we are using is to represent data as a bit, which is 1, as a half of the signal is going to be represented by a positive voltage, and a 0 is going to be represented by a negative voltage. So that is how it works. If this is the data like we were showing here, that is how it works. There is going to be that kind of inversion, and the inverted works in the opposite, meaning that instead of switching here, you just invert that signal to represent a 0 until a 1 occurs again, and then there is going to be an inversion, or there is going to be a switch. So that is how non-return to zero, level, and inverted they work. So I hope that is clear. So we go to return to zero, and return to zero works in the other side, whereby we are using the 3 levels, where we have the positive, the negative, and the 0. Now, when we are talking about the positive and the negative and the 0, is that positive is going to have a representation of a 1, a negative is going to be represented by a 0, and the switch which happens at the 0 level is the one which determines whether you are going to switch to a 1 or a 0. But we are saying this one has the disadvantage that you will require a lot of bandwidth. Why? Because you have like 3 levels of representation. Then, and this is what we are talking about, the return to zero. It is shown in this diagram, whereby if we start here at this level, a 0, when you move until you reach the middle of the signal, as you meet at the middle of the signal, you are going to have a level representation. And you will switch at the middle here, happening at this 0 level, before you move to a 1 on another level. So a 0 is going to be on the lower side of the waveform, a 1 is going to be on the higher side of the waveform, but there is going to be a shift in between. But now we are saying that will require a higher bandwidth. So that is how return to zero operates. Then we have biphase. Biphase, these are schemes which are working on both sides of the waveform, that is on the positive and the negative side of the waveform, but then they are going to have a synchronization clock. They are what we call Manchester and differential Manchester. And in this, when we are talking about Manchester encoding scheme, we are saying that it encodes the clock and the data of a synchronous bit stream. That is where it has made some improvement. Apart from just encoding the data, you are also encoding the clock, meaning that there is going to be synchronization. That is something which was lacking in the previous encoding schemes, but in the Manchester encoding scheme, which has also been adopted by the OSI model, then it includes the clocking mechanism. So in the Manchester encoding scheme, it combines the return to zero, that is transition in the middle of the bit, like we were showing here, this transition, that is what we are talking about. And apart from that, it also uses the level scheme, and return to zero level scheme. So the duration of the bit is divided into 2 halves. The voltage remains at one level during the first half and moves to the other level in the second half. And this is what we are showing. So there is this clock here, which has been included, and the data is right here. So you need to combine this data and the clock. That is why we have included the return to zero mechanism and the non-return to zero level. And this is how it is going to operate. This is the data which is being transmitted, 10100111101. This data is following this clocking mechanism. The clock is just for showing the levels. Like in the middle of the bit, the clock is going to switch at the middle here and comes down again. So when we are using the Manchester, This one is the General Electric DOMAS, and this one is adopted by IEEE 802.3. So this is how it works. A 1 is going to be, this is the bit level for a 1. So in order to include the clocking mechanism, the clock is here, as shown here. And as you reach the middle of the bit, then that is where you put your 1. Okay? So a 1 is operating here. And then this is the one represented. So our clock is there, here. And then our 1 is right here. Then you get to the second bit. In the second bit, you still need to include the clock again, and then have your 0 up here. So it has the return to 0 mechanism, which is using levels. Look here, 1 is down here, 0 is up here. Again, the clock is included here, and then 1 comes down here, and then clock here, a 0 comes up here. Again, the clock is included, a 0 is again up here, and it goes on like that. So that is how the representation is done. You can read through and understand it. What is happening in this differential Manchester is that it is working in the opposite. If you look at it properly, it means that the clock is represented down here and a 1 comes up here. The clock is coming up here and a 0 comes down here. So it is just inverting what this first Manchester is doing, and the differential Manchester works down there. So that is how it combines the clock and the data, so that it has the advantage of synchronization. So this is the Manchester and the differential Manchester, whereby there is no inversion here and there is an inversion here. So you can look at it and understand it. So the characteristics of Manchester encoding schemes include a logic 0, which is indicated by a 0 to a 1 transition, and the signal transitions do not always occur at the bit boundary, but there is always a transition at the center of each bit. And I have explained the reason for that is that you can include the clocking mechanism. So the differential physical layer transmission do not employ an inverting line driver to convert the binary digits to an electrical signal, and therefore the signal on the wire is not opposite the output by the encoder. So that is where the difference comes in Manchester encoding schemes and the other encoding schemes. So the Manchester is also called by phase because each bit is encoded by a 90-degree phase transition or by a negative 90 degrees phase transition, and it is shown here, whereby you have to move 90 degrees as your transition, and also here. So that is what we are explaining here by the biphase coding mechanism. So I hope up to there we are clear. Now, the logic used here to represent data using Manchester is that for a bit 1, there is a transition from negative voltage to positive voltage in the middle of the bit. And for 0, there is a transition from positive to negative. So this is something you need to note very clearly, that the transition, like in Manchester, we are talking a 1 will be moving from negative towards positive, a 0 will be moving from positive towards negative, and that happens in the middle of the bit. This is what we are talking about. 1 is right there, and a 0 is right there. So that is what we are describing. Now, for differential Manchester, the assumption in the example is that the previous signal before the starting of the data set was positive. That is why it was beginning at the negative level. So that is the assumption which was made so that you don't get confused with that example I was showing there. So the advantages of Manchester is that it overcomes the several problems. Like I have told you, one of the advantages it has is synchronization or the clocking component. And it also removes the problem associated with baseline wandering and the DC component. So that is one of the advantages, or that is the second and the third advantages of Manchester encoding schemes. And the only limitation is that minimum bandwidth is required. And that minimum bandwidth is double what is used by non-return to zero. So it will consume bandwidth, but it will remove some of those challenges which are associated by the previous schemes. Then we come to bipolar schemes. And here, these bipolar schemes, they use 3 levels of voltage in the positive, negative, and 0. The voltage level for one data element is at 0, while the voltage level for the other element alternates between positive and negative. So these bipolar schemes are alternatives to the non-return to 0, and this is how they work. We have the first one is the alternate Mach inversion, whereby a neutral 0 voltage represents binary 0, and binary ones are represented by alternating positive and negative voltages. So a 0 will always be at the line, but a positive 1 or a 1 will be either in the positive side or the negative side. In the pseudo-ternary coding scheme, bit 1 is encoded as a 0 voltage, and bit 0 is encoded as the alternating positive and negative voltages. So they are just working in opposite. So in the AMI, or the alternate Mach inversion, this is what we have. A 0 will be on the line here. A 1 will be either up here, a 0 on the line, a 1 can also be down here. So that is how it works. Pseudo-ternary, it is the opposite. A 0 will be either a 1, it will be a positive voltage or a negative voltage, and a 1 will be on the line there of the waveform. So that is how they operate. So any question up to there?